Ugh. Up early. My wife's put cappuccino in my perfectly seasoned cup of coffee. I'm gonna have to scrub it. But anyway, Dragonslayer classes. Going over them real quick. A little extra afterwards or whatever. Some opinions and blah blah blah. You know. This is. I'm not doing a hardcore compare contrast. I'm not doing it. But today is Thief. A lot of us grognards are of the mind that you can run a campaign without a thief. That in OD&D and others you didn't need it, right? If you're being descriptive enough and your RP is deep enough, you don't need a thief. Right? It's hard. Try not to fall into the habit of just being a die dropper. Right? I'll get to that when I get to the abilities. Core class, ergo. No core ability requirement. Humans are unlimited. Dwarf 12, Elf 10, Gnome 12, Halfling 14, Half Elf 12, Half Orc 12. Pretty much everybody can be a thief, and pretty much everybody can go high level as a thief, right? Similarly to older editions and stuff like Beckman. You humans can go unlimited, and I think the progression is mapped out in a lot. The progression is only mapped out to 10th level, right? In the core classes, the spell memorization charts are mapped out to 20. Right? You don't get any. As written, you don't get any extra attack bonus after 10th, just hit points. Right. There is the opportunity for hit point bloat because you get your con bonus on top of your bonus hit points after 10. So that +2 per level is +2 plus con. So there is an opportunity for bloat in all these classes. The thief is prime requisite dex, and then the hit dice are d6. That is the biggest stickler with the BX versus the AD&D lot crowd right there. The D4 thief, where you don't want to get into combat at all, and the D6 thief, if you have to, you can. But you don't want to stay in it a lot, right? Because all the monsters are D8 hit points. So the D8 is your cleric, your monster hit die right there. So that's sturdier than normal. And then your fighter and your rangers have higher hit die. The thief gets that respectable D6. It's not huge. It's not small. It's your standard. Let's be honest. The D6 is our standard die. So the thief. Knaves, thugs. There is no bard in Labyrinth. I keep saying it. Dragonslayer. There's no bard. The thief can do that role more than anything else if he just simply picks up an instrument. In my opinion, a bard is just a role play thing. If you want your wizard to be more into lore, then you focus on the lore like the bardic college thing, and you play an instrument where you have great oratory skills. Same way with the thief. You can be more that rakish bard that's become the trope, right? Any way you do it. When you have the illusionist, you are the flamboyant entertainer, right? So that role works well with the thief. And if you have a thief illusionist, then that would be the best way to do a bard without having to go and make a bard class for your game, in my opinion, right? Is my recommendation. Fighter scout, mainly just a scout. You pair this with the fighter class, it's going to be a decent scout. The guild and dues, they got a 10% tithe they got to do. My guys are really focused on making their tithes, even though they're not anywhere near a thieves guild. So we are having some issues because they're having to pay for shipping Postage. We had a discussion about postage. So 10% goes back to the guild. So they're up north looting, doing stuff, and they're sending this back to their guild. We'll play it fast and loose. I didn't want to do an urban campaign, so it's working for us right now. Weapons and armor. Leather instead of leather. No shield. No two-handed weapons. No two-handed melee weapons. So you can use a bow, right, or crossbow. Language. These can't. And this is the first time I've ever seen or remember that Thieves Camp is specifically said that it is a mixture of sign language and slang and code phrases. It's not a written language. When we have a language in our game, we automatically assume it's written, and this is not. Very upset someone used my coffee mug. XP slightly more than AD&D. So, I noticed that is just, maybe that's just because of the OGL debacle. Just a little bit more to go up a level. Backstab. This is the bread and butter of the thief. People like that massive damage. Just I'll make a note of the subtle difference between that and the crits, right? A thief may backstab. The thief must attack his or her opponent from behind using move silent and hide in shadows. Under these conditions, they get +4 to hit and double damage. Everywhere else in this, it's double rolled damage for crits or anything like a fumble like that. It's the double rolled damage for charges or anything like that. Under the thief, it's double damage, period. All right, and where everything else has been specifically say double rolled, this seems to stand out, and therefore I would allow it to double the bonuses for strength, magic, for whatever reason that you got double a plus on that attack. So the thief is the only one on a cursory examination that gets to double the bonuses, which is when you can stack stuff later on that's big, and it makes it better than a regular crit. It makes it stand out against it. You see what I'm saying? So the backstab here. Now, automatically the real thing I'm going to do is surprise. Anytime you have surprise, I allow double damage. So that way you can backstab people right to the belly, right? The whole the angel blade, or I startle him and then I cut his throat. Some of our favorite action figures just reach out and they cut you right across the throat. I consider that like a backstab. He didn't see it coming. Rick, he cut his throat. You know, dig it. The thief's skills, it goes over these. Oh, and the one thing, comprehend language. At 4th level, they get 80% probability to just read any language. I think that's not much different than what it was in the past. Excludes magic scrolls, right? Thieves do not read magic scrolls in Dragonslayer. Class protection, niche protection. They are your archaeologist, your forger, your linguist. They know all these extras. They're not a spellcaster, so it keeps it in the mundane for them. Most of your script is going to be on magical. If you want someone to read magic, you need an arcane spellcaster type, right? There is that class protection working its way back in there. It's subtle. And then we go through the it goes over all the thief abilities, and it adds one, just one. Now the percentiles on these have been modified to be superior or higher probability than they were with AD&D by a factor of 10% pretty much across the board, 10 to 15%, which is enough of the nudge that it doesn't suck totally at first level. Remember how hit or miss the thief skills were in AD&D. It wasn't until 3rd level that they actually they were consistent enough to be usable. This fixes that, so at 1st level they're usable. So you're looking at a 35 on average, right, as opposed to the 20 and 25s. And then it all goes up either 2% increase or a 5% increase as it goes up levels, except for the D6 abilities. The hear noise doesn't change versus any version that I can tell. And then at a glance, I mean, I'm not going to grab out 3 books to double check. They get an appraise thing. The appraisal is anything appraise any treasure that can be held in hand and determine approximate value in gold pieces. Failure means a miscalculation. So have a 2 and 6 at first and second to be able to figure out how much the jewelry is. It says any treasure in hand. So all the gnomes can determine all the short races can determine the value of a gem, right? 2 and 6 for dwarf, and 1 and 6 for everybody else, right? Just put cappuccino in my mug. Really, you don't wash a coffee mug over time as much. You just rinse it out, so you season it. You season it over time, just like you season a cast iron pan. Get upset. Anyway, I like that. The miscalculation is going to be aggravating for me because I'm going to have to keep multiple copies of the actual value on a handout sheet versus what they've gotten. They just recently had an NPC interaction, and they fenced some stuff because they went into a house of a missing mage, and he was well locked in town. So it wasn't like they were going to the dungeon. They went to someone's house. There's a distinction. I like the thief. It seems like you can get by without one in a party. If you're doing an urban campaign, they are required. If you're in a dungeon delve, they are nice. But if you have ingenious players, I don't think you need a thief as much as a lot of people put into it, unless you're doing a lot of die drop exploration. And with the die drop is no explaining how you approach the trap. I search for traps and drop a die. It's lazy, but we do it, right? Especially when we're in a hurry with the dungeon or we're going to get a lot of delving done. I prefer when people explain what they're doing, right? And I've been in groups where people absolutely hate that. They don't want to slow down while you take the time with the trap. But they also want to make sure the trap guy is the guy doing all the traps, and no one else just touches anything. Like, they don't open doors, they don't touch doorknobs, they don't touch the chest until the thief has been up there like an hour, right? Why am I spending so much on torches? I don't know. Maybe because you spend an hour with every chest you find. That wasn't even locked. That's a decent thief, dude. I like the 80% comprehend language with the appraisal and the slightly superior skills. So you're not just a delver. You could be like a researcher. You could apply this to, instead of having a tomb robber class, which I still might make for Dragonslayer. I'll be honest, I really like the tomb robber. And it's more of a hybrid class, a little thicker ear. But I don't think it's needed. We want to do extra classes and races for these games, but quite honestly, they're not needed all the time. And you could really just roleplay a thief to be a research guy. You know, I got a high int. I'm not so much with the locks and stuff, but since you're not doing a specialized system where you apply points, they're good in these situations, even though their focus, RP-wise, is through appraisal and research. They still know how to pick pockets, you know. But I dig it. It's decent. Nothing ground shaking different about other classes, other versus other games. Just does it well. And then it brings back the racial adjustments, the racial thief skill bonuses. It doesn't do the dex, so there's no adjustment to abilities for high dex or low dex. You could have a very like an 8 dex thief and be purely functional and suffer no penalties except to your AC. You have no penalties to your thieving skills. But the racial ones, you have certain races are better at other stuff. Like 10% for dwarf for find and remove traps. So find and remove traps at first is 35 plus your racial adjustment 10. That's 45% at first level. That's decent. Elves better at hiding shadows. 10% to move hiding shadows. 25 at thirst plus 10, 35. Gnomes pretty much good across the board except for climb walls. All the stumpies get a minus 10 to 15% on the climbing the walls. Halflings is probably the best. 10 to hide and 10 to move. So they're at first it's 35% hiding shadows and 43 movement. And they have their hiding shadows at 35 plus they have their halfling ability to move 2 and 6 motionless. I hide in shadows. You're dropping 2 die as a halfling. It's the closest you're going to get to advantage in an old school game, right? Which means halflings are damn near invisible if they got someplace to hide, which is awesome. Easy to overlook the toddler hiding behind the coffee table. I'm not talking about the toddler in the middle of the floor with the blanket over him. You can't see me. That's like 3E version of how hiding shadows works. I just drop a D20. Nat 20. I hide in shadows in the continual light room. Use some reason, people. Okay, please, just use some reason. But typically your dungeons are going to be shadowy and stuff. I like the minor adjustments to thief skills. And once you get to guildmaster status, unless there's negatives apply, it's only a 1% chance of failure. So a super high level thief is 99% across the top, unless his racial adjustments drop it lower, or situational says otherwise. Which means if you're a high level thief and you're a pickpocketer, why would a 14th level thief be picking pockets, right? You're robbing houses. Tomorrow, I'm going to go over the assassin. And then I'm going to start delving into the spells, because they're all a little different. I've just noticed there's a lot of minor differences. And we're still ruling. I can't, I got to reread everything again, but so far we're having a blast. I guess it's all that really matters. Everybody's having a fun time. Y'all stay safe. Enjoy your games. Have a good time. Keep on playing. Later, y'all.